Hello, I'm Shelly. I work with Nivides for its marketing initiatives, and I would like to welcome you to the webinar today on how robotic process automation is accelerating digital transformation. Now, before we begin with the presentation, I would like to run through a few housekeeping items. If you face any issues with audio or video, you can post your queries using the chat window. And if you have any questions related to the presentation or the topic, you can share them using the question window. We will take all the questions at the end of the presentation, and in case we run out of time and can't address some of them, we will definitely reach out via an email with our answers. Now, I will be sharing a quick background of Nivides and then I will turn it over to our guests. Nivides has been around since 2011. Our focus is to help businesses work at the peak efficiency with our unified business automation platform. The platform combines a different set of automation tools natively, and with that, we have been helping businesses across verticals to meet their automation goals. So let me go ahead and invite John Burke from Solomon AdWords and request him to begin the talk. John, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. A little background on Solomon Edwards. We are a professional service organization that's been around for just over 20 years, based in the Philadelphia suburbs, but with offices and practitioners located throughout the country. Our three main focus areas as we help to support our clients are in the consulting and advisory services, staff augmentation, as well as permanent placement. Our deep areas of expertise are in accounting and finance, business transformation, governance and regulatory compliance, transaction and regulatory advisory, as well as turnaround and restructuring projects. Today's session, we want to get into the overwhelming need that we're seeing in the marketplace for accounting and finance to automate their processes. This has been accelerated as a result of COVID-19. But the big thing here is, if we can move along to the next slide, thanks, is, what we feel here is RPA is more than just about the technology. We feel that it's going to impact the entire operating model for both the enterprise as well as within the finance functions. There's a lot of implications into adopting RPA, more than just looking for cost takeout, labor arbitrage opportunities. There's a big component of the things that you start thinking about today are the skills and talent that you will need to adopt and implement once having an RPA program. Obviously, there's a lot of risk mitigation benefits to having RPA to reduce a lot of the manual work that's being done in spreadsheets. And we know that type of work is just not going to be sustainable over the coming years. When mentioning the skills and talent and capabilities that your team is going to need, we view this as an opportunity to help that career path progression for your finance and accounting team members. This will get them out of maybe doing things that they have done on a regular and recurring basis and provide opportunities for them to take on new challenges and add perhaps more value in decision-making functions for your company. Go to the next slide. As we look at what is automatable in the finance and accounting landscape, we have seen a dramatic shift over the last 2-3 years. And if we looked at this chart here on the left of those functions that are fully automatable, it would be a lot less. And we anticipate more and more activities to be fully automatable at an accelerated rate. We feel now is the time for companies that have not embarked on these RPA journeys to really take a strong look at it. It could be very overwhelming at first in trying to digest everything out there, and this is what the purpose of today's call and webinar is, to kind of, where do you start, what do you need to consider, what does it look like, and potentially, you know, where would your organization need help in that journey. The big thing here is, like I said, the percentages are getting higher and higher at an accelerated rate that can be automatable, and more and more functions are coming onto the list on the radar to be adopted and use RPA. I'll turn it over to Alan Hester from Nividus.
Yeah, thanks, John. So let's take a look now at RPA in a little more detail. And let me just give a little bit of an overview for those of you who don't know. RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation. And we'll go through some things here, but before we get into this, let me just put up a quick poll to get a sense of where you guys stand in terms of an RPA journey within your organization. So if you don't know or understand what RPA is yet, go ahead and say you have no plans, because I'd say that's probably most appropriate, and we will continue to explain this. But for any of you that already do know RPA and you're doing some things with it, please just answer appropriately so we will know kind of where our audience stands. So the results are coming in here, and it looks like most of you are in the camp of planning to explore RPA in the next 12 months. Let's just give this another second or so because we still have a good number of responses coming in. But I'm going to go ahead and close this off now. So we ended up with 47% saying that they're planning to explore RPA in the next 12 months. So that's good. So at least then most of you have heard of RPA before, and this might be a bit of review for you, but RPA is really just a mechanism for taking manual processes that had been done by humans in the past and training a bot to do that task in the same exact way. So that the key point there is in the same exact way, in that the bot is using the same user interface to do the work that a human would be using. And so the reason why that's important is that means that it's much, much easier from a technology perspective to set up this kind of automation. So you don't need any kind of sophisticated programming knowledge or development background. Really, to do this kind of work, you need to understand your own business processes, and you have to be technically aware. And so just running through these things, really everything that the bot does is driven by a set of rules. So as long as you can come up with some rules that will govern the behavior of the bots, and as long as the systems that you're working on have a user interface, then the bot should be able to automate your tasks that you're looking to have automated. Now, some things to just be perfectly clear on, that there is no physical or human bot that is part of this process. This is all software based. So don't be looking for something like R2D2 to be rolling up in your business if you go down this path. And this isn't something that is ever going to replace humans completely. There's always going to be the need for higher level thinking and reasoning that the bots can't do. However, as John already mentioned, the list of things that can be automated is growing as we start seeing more and more advances in artificial intelligence. So one of the things we're not going to spend any time on today, but is good to keep in mind, is that RPA on its own is able to do some really good automations, but when you combine it with other technologies, you can do even more. And so that's why I make the point that artificial intelligence is making real advances so that more and more business processes can be automated. It's not just used for cost cutting. This is something that's used to improve customer service, response times to customers, and also it's something that can really boost employee satisfaction as well, because when you take all of these repetitive mundane tasks off of people's off of people's plates, they're generally happier about their job, and so they're going to be more engaged, more productive, and stick around longer. So there's a lot of buzz about RPA, and if you look at what some big companies are saying about it, the market is big right now, but they're predicting that it's going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And I would say that the pandemic has really only accelerated this. I think what we are seeing in the past couple of months is that there are many companies that, as they deal with how to bounce back from the effect that the pandemic has had on them, this is really a key component to help them either get back to where they were or even get past that point and do it in a way that doesn't require huge capital expenses or bringing on a lot of staff to do. And so that's why this technology is really exciting to so many companies. So since we're focusing on what all the possibilities are, one of the things that I will say is when we're engaging with a new customer and we explain to them automation in general and the kinds of things that can be done with it, I think immediately everyone sees the value in it, but sometimes they have trouble understanding how it can apply to their particular organization. And so one of the things that we tell them is think about all of the areas in your business processes where you're using a lot of email or you're using a lot of Excel spreadsheets. And typically, all of those cases are great places to start for automation, because usually what you're doing by using those emails and spreadsheets is you're letting a human stand in the gap between systems that are not well integrated. So much of people's time they spend copying and pasting data from one place to another place just because there's no other way to do it. And you need to be able to get the reports out. You need to be able to create your invoices, create your proposals, whatever it is that you're working on. There's generally this same problem that a lot of data is required from a lot of different places, and it doesn't all come together automatically. And this is the kind of situation that this technology is great for. So you could see a lot of example processes up here on your screen, but this is by no means an exhaustive list. There is really an infinite number of ways that this technology can be useful to you, depending on, what are the different business processes that are in place in your company, and what are really the tasks that are taking a lot of time. And that really can vary from company to company. And so that's why, it takes a little bit of analysis up front to be able to figure out what is the best place for you to start and where are you going to get the most bang for the buck. But this is this is one of the great reasons why this technology is really taking off, is because you don't have to do everything at once. So I already talked about how fast and easy and inexpensive it is to get started with this, but part of the reason for that is that you don't have to start big. You can start small and you can just incrementally make improvements over time. So if you look at an end-to-end business process that has 10 steps in it, maybe it's really easy to automate one or two of those steps. And you can work on those initially, get those in place, and then later, when you have some more time or effort to put towards it, you can look at the other 8 and potentially bring those on one by one over the next number of weeks or months as you see fit. So that kind of flexibility is something that really has made this popular for companies to implement. So let's just look at some of the other benefits of RPA. One of the things that happens when people are doing these manual repetitive tasks, they maybe at the beginning of the day or the first couple times they do it are paying very close attention and will do it very accurately. But if you're doing that same thing over and over again, and it's not really part of your job, you're just doing it to get through it, there's the chance that you might make some errors here and there. And so obviously that has impact to everything that happens downstream from that. And with a bot, once you train it how to do that process, it's going to do it the same way every time without errors. So that deals with both the accuracy and the consistency. But the other part of it is that the bot itself doesn't need to take any breaks. It's willing to work for you 24/7, 365, and you don't have to pay it anymore to do that work. And it's able to handle all kinds of tasks. So a bot, unlike a person, once it has been trained to do a task, then any bot that you have can do that task. You don't have to do cross training. Bots are not specialists, they're generalists. So they can switch instantly from doing one task to doing another task as long as it's been previously trained on doing both of those, and it doesn't skip a beat. That's the kind of thing that with a human, usually there would be a lot of retraining required, or at least shifting of gears that would be required to move seamlessly from one thing to another. The other big thing about this technology that companies like is that not only is there a fast ROI where you can see the full return on your investment quickly, but the ROI on this is usually pretty easy to track. Some things that you do, it's more ambiguous what the ROI might be, but because these are generally tasks that you are currently doing and you know how much time and money you're spending on doing them now, it's pretty easy then to understand how much you're saving by automating them. We already talked about how this is quick and easy to build, gives you operational agility. In some cases, a lot of these processes that you might automate might be more ad hoc, not written down. Maybe there are things that are just in people's heads. And when you go through the process of automating that, then you're also institutionalizing that so that it's accessible to anyone to understand not just how it's working, but exactly where it is in the process, which is the last point here about the audit trail. So this is something that you kind of get for free when you implement this technology, is that you are able to tell not just where things are in the process, but exactly when each step happened, when it started, when it ended, who did it, if it's a human task or a bot task. It will be it will be shown down to very fine-grained level information on all of the steps that are performed. So if you're in a business where auditability is something that is important to you, this is a very quick and easy way where you can get that. Okay. So now let's look at kind of, we call this a methodology, but really this is just the process that you follow when you're going to do this kind of project. And it's all common sense. So we probably don't need to spend a huge amount of time on this. But the first step is figuring out what process you're going to pick in order to look at for automation. And as I said before, this is often the showstopper for a lot of people because they understand the benefits of it and they understand that they have a lot of processes where they could theoretically at least reap those benefits, but it's hard for them to narrow those down to where they should really start. And so, we follow this workshop approach where we will actually help you with being able to pick that out in cases where you're not able to do that on your own. But in a lot of cases, it's really just a matter of taking some time and looking at the possibilities and being able to assess what's going to be the best fit for a starting point. Because obviously, you want to start with the quick wins, the low hanging fruit. Once you have that, then you look at that end-to-end process and figure out which of those steps can be automated, and also take a look at the process itself, because sometimes there are other advantages to be gained outside just automation. Sometimes making some quick and easy changes to the process itself will also have a benefit. And then you move into the design phase where you start figuring out what are the important metrics that you need to look at in terms of being able to understand the end results and what is delivered, and how you're going to build this in a way that's going to meet all the objectives. And then you just move into development where you actually build it, and deployment where you roll it out into production. So not too different from any other kind of project, except that usually these projects, we're talking about a duration of weeks. These aren't usually projects that are going to take months or years. So let me just quickly just go through the components of the Nividus platform, because this is obviously what we are using to build these kinds of automations. And the reason why we are so proud about what we have to offer in this space is that we have not just the RPA piece that we have been mostly talking about, but as I mentioned early on, as artificial intelligence advances and it opens up the door to automating more things, you have the ability to do more and more with automation. And we have that all built into our platform natively for you. So it's not just automating specific steps, but also being able to do the end-to-end business process automations, including all of the human steps that you might have. So I'm not going to go into detail on any of these because I want to have time to get into a few case studies here and just give you some examples of what other companies have done with this kind of technology. So this first one is we say here, a leading drink and brewing company, actually Anheuser-Busch in this case. This one is about the AP process, and this is, you will see this in a couple of the case studies, but a very common function for the RPA bots is doing some kind of reconciliation step where data in one place is being compared to data in another place, because this is usually a manual task that involves a lot of people and takes a lot of time, and there's always usually pretty big accuracy issues with that as well. And so in this case, the customer had hundreds of invoices from 7 to 10 different countries. And by taking a look at all those invoices, we were able to identify some common formatting for the invoices that were contributing the most to the business, and then train some bots to extract the data from the invoices and perform the three-way match for PO type invoices and a two-way match for non-PO types. And then obviously there's always going to be, with this kind of automation, there's going to be an exception handling process as well. And you want to keep the exceptions as low as possible, because that's where the humans have to continue to come into play. And so you want to get it to the point where as few as possible exceptions are being handled and as much as possible is being processed straight through. So in this case, it resulted in a 90% reduction in manual effort, greater than 85% improvement in turnaround time, and 50% savings. This one is more standard invoice processing. So this is just looking at how much effort that it took to get all the information out of the invoices and into SAP. So common task that many of you might be faced with. Maybe you don't use SAP, you might use some other kind of ERP. That's another great thing about this kind of technology, is that integrations with existing systems are very easy. Typically, these vendors kind of hold you hostage and you can't do an integration unless you work with them. But using this kind of technology, that is not true. Okay, here's one related to invoice order creation. This one's a little bit interesting because you don't usually think of something like this as an order, but this is about meter reading orders. So this has been during the pandemic, the electric companies have been wanting to find ways to reduce expenses. And so they have been finding ways to capture these meter readings in an automated fashion. And that includes creating the meter reading orders, which again was a function that had to be done in SAP. And then in addition to the orders, we also put in place another part of this where people in the field, even the customers, would be able to use their phones, take a picture of the meter itself, and the bot would get the information out of that picture to be able to use that for creation of the invoices. Okay, and then this last one, as I talked about, reconciliation, common function for bots. In this case, we're talking about a bank that had to do reconciliation statements for huge volumes of transactions with lots of different branches, and it's involved a large manual team comparing spreadsheets of different data coming from different sources and manually matching them to produce this reconciliation statement. And we were able to train a bot to do that function, and it resulted in 85% of that work going away, being completely automated, and much higher accuracy than what they were seeing the other way that they were doing it. So one last thing that I just wanted to bring up is an interesting offer that we have that sometimes helps with companies that are either getting started or trying to get restarted with this kind of initiative. We see in a lot of cases that companies might do a small pilot or a POC, not know where to go from there, or in some cases, they might get to the point where it starts looking like it's going to be really expensive because of the vendor that they were dealing with. And so we put together this quick start offering as a way to kind of get past that point. So if you haven't done anything yet, this is a great place to start. If you've hit some roadblocks, this is a way to kind of get past that, because what we have is all of the costs associated with getting one process up and running in production. So both the software licensing and all the services are rolled together in one bundle. And so this is usually a great way to be able to manage the risk of these kinds of projects. So at this point, I'm going to just turn it back over to John, who is going to share some closing remarks.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it very much. And thanks, John, for the comments at the beginning. You know, just to close, at Solomon Edwards, we really believe in this concept, this technology, and this improvement opportunity for, in the case of our audience today, accounting and finance functions that, as John mentioned, are being really asked to elevate their game in terms of contributions back to the organization using the same or less resources. And there's a real opportunity, I think, here to achieve that objective. I think this was a very insightful introduction to RPA. And just to let you all know that we'll be having a continual series of these webinars that'll be dig further and further into this technology through including demonstrations and implementation, et cetera. And we're available, Solomon Edwards is available to continue the discussion with you on a one-on-one basis on how you may benefit from this technology. So I want to thank everyone for attending. I know it's a busy time now, and we appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you in future events. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you, John Mormon, John Burke, and Alan for such an informative webinar. Let me conclude it by thanking you all for your time. I hope everyone enjoyed the session. As John mentioned, we will continue to conduct live webinars that can add value in the automation space. Thank you for your time again.